Hi, it's Paul Camillos. Welcome to Series 5 of Shooting the Breeze. Join me and my co-host Jacinta Gavin as we talk to inspiring players, amazing coaches and the legends behind the scenes and at the grassroots of the game. This marks the start of our 4th year of covering women's hoops and women in hoops, and throughout the series we welcome experts like Lyndon Moore from New Zealand and other special guests from across the world to get a global picture of the game. During this series, we'll take a closer look at the grassroots and the passionate people at the community level. And of course, the 30th edition of the FIBA Women's Asia Cup will be heading to our shores for the first time to showcase the best women's hoops in our region. Hit that subscribe button, and to show your support, rate and leave us a review on iTunes so we reach more listeners.
For me, going into this, I knew that I wanted to be on deck, just myself though. I wanted to see how I could do this, how well I could do this, and like which part of it I like. Because I know in the entertainment industry, there's so many steps to production, and I was like, I don't really know which part really stands out to me. So I really wanted to get the full scope of it. And it turns out I really enjoyed doing every part of it.
In the first of our Passport Pod episodes for Series 5, we're talking with Jocelyn Song, a budding film writer and director based in New Jersey on her college thesis and directorial debut, Song Pei-jing. The first female director we've hosted on Shooting the Breeze, Jocelyn has crafted a moving short documentary featuring her sister, Sophia Song, the first American Taiwanese basketball player to play professional hoops in Taiwan. A documentary piece that touches on universal themes of community, belonging, aspiration, and sacrifice for family, alongside Sophia's basketball journey. But what unfolds is a deeply affecting and personal story. And as Jocelyn candidly shares with us, it was a surprising journey of discovery, not just for herself, but of her sister Sophia. We love to see documentary pieces on women's hoops, and especially by female directors. Song Pei-jing will screen to the public as part of the LA Asian Film Festival next month. The STB crew are grateful to have been able to preview this wonderful short doco and look forward to watching more by Jocelyn Song. Enjoy. Welcome to Shooting the Breeze and our Passport podcast series. Joining me as always, my co-host Jacinta Gavin, and our guest today is from the United States. She's in New York at the moment. It's Jocelyn Song, who has just completed and entered a short film, Song Pei-jing, into the 39th LA Asian Pacific Film Festival. And it's a story about her sister, Sophia, who is now playing professional basketball in Taiwan. Jocelyn, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Wow, thank you both for the intro and just having me and waking up at 7 a.m. to do this with me. It's insane. Really happy to be here and really honored to and grateful to be able to talk about my film with you guys.
Cool. And it's our pleasure to have you on. Now, first of all, I suppose the big question is, why did you decide to do a documentary about your sister's journey in basketball?
Yeah, I mean, this wasn't something that was set really. This whole project kind of started in early 2021, so almost about 2 years ago now. I was like in my spring semester of my junior year of college. I was at home because of COVID, and I knew that I would have to come up with a thesis idea in order to graduate in 2022. And at the time, I was like, maybe I'll make a horror or thriller short because I love that genre, but I didn't have a story there, so I was like, no, that's not an option. So I kind of defaulted to a short doc, and I really wanted a story that would have already been, kind of laid out for me just to scramble together creatively, I guess. And I knew I wanted to do, if I was going to make a documentary, it was going to be sports. It was going to be on probably an Asian American athlete, something personal, someone I knew from the community, someone who'd be able to fit my schedule because when this was going to be filming, I was going to be in school and also doing basketball at the same time. And yeah, so again, just really looking for something personal and meaningful. And as I'm thinking about all this and brainstorming, like literally next to me on the couch is Sophia, who was literally at the time like talking to her agent in Taiwan, and she had like at the time again no idea if she was going to be able to play over there yet. And I'm like thinking, I'm like, well, she kind of checks all the boxes, and this is my sister, and we already have like I already knew we had so much archival footage too, like photos, videos, stuff from our childhood that I could use. She wasn't going to be doing much at the time except for maybe training, so her schedule's pretty flexible. And again, she checked all the boxes, and so I asked her, and luckily she said yeah, and we kind of got the ball rolling from there.
No pun intended.
No pun intended.
So it's kind of interesting because, having had a chance to watch the documentary, and it's really great. I really enjoyed watching it.
Thank you.
That whole part of the story about, minority communities coming together, sport bonding people, it's a common theme. We see it a lot. And I'm just curious to, from your perspective, how do you feel about, the capability of sport to bring people together, and in particularly in your family's case?
Yeah, I mean, I think every, step of her journey we were supported by our community, like through and through each of our careers, I would say. And we're really fortunate to have grown up in, one of the Asian enclaves in SoCal. There's like many, but we were able to grow up in one that really loved basketball. And so all our lives, I mean, we were surrounded with people who love the sport just as much as we do. And I mean, that's pretty much how all these connections were made, like just friends in the neighborhood, teammates, and then even like some people even college, like you see them playing against each other in college. I think it was all through, this ability for basketball to bring us all together. Yeah, and then like, this is like random that just came to my mind right now. But like, for example, like someone I knew in the basketball community, but never really got to talk to personally. We kind of just knew each other from afar. I like randomly like ran into her in Philly, and we had to like do a little double take because it's been like years since I've seen her. But we ended up talking, and like she's like a crazy hooper at Penn right now at UPenn. So, and I ended up like watching her play her last few games of her career. But I think like interactions like that are kind of like what you get out of this community. Like, and I think it's really unique, but we are really fortunate to have grown up playing in the leagues for sure.
What about in the wider context of living in LA, being from, having your parents or your grandparents have migrated for somewhere else? And LA is so spread out. I mean, I think in our minds, it's easy to think that it's just a city like any other city, but it's actually so spread with so many different surrounding suburbs, and it's quite large. But yeah, and then the importance of being second generation migrants and having that importance of sport. Because what kind of other opportunities, I guess, is there to connect culturally in LA apart from sport? It's spread.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of these leagues, but organizations that have these teams would host a lot of events around their tournaments. So there would be like dances. We have like Japanese festivals sometimes here and there. A lot of events around the holidays, like Christmas is a big one where people just gather in like a church. All the teams would gather in a church and just like have food and have a huge like potluck together where they just bring, cultural dishes. These Japanese festivals, it's all about, Japanese culture and celebrating that. So yeah, and these organizations are, again, all spread out across SoCal. So when we do have these tournaments, we pull, we're driving from different areas of LA to go play against each other and be together in like one space.
And that's interesting. You're talking about the, driving from here to there. Now, LA is a big place.
Yeah.
So what sort of travel times were you talking about going between competitions? Because, I know from my experiences, traveling in LA, sometimes it can take you hours to get places.
Oh, yeah. Some of these tournaments, if we're talking, a lot of them were in like Torrance or South Bay, which is where, in the film, that was where Sophia's first high school was, her freshman year high school. And that was an hour drive without traffic. Some of them would be in Orange County, which is a little bit, I would say it's a little more east of Torrance. So, but still like 50 miles from where we live, about 55 miles. And then there could be some even in the Inland Empire, which is kind of where I went to college and maybe a little further. and that's an hour and a half with traffic. So yeah, we're talking about, like, it's a pretty big driving distance, I would say. But we also, my city, we also hosted a lot of tournaments too. So there'll be people coming into our city to play. So it's just, yeah, it's a lot of traveling, but it's worth it for sure.
Because especially like I think I'm not sure if it's Australia wide, but I know in my state you need to live within a certain area to go to a certain school, unless you're getting, like a athletic or academic scholarship to be able to attend a school out of area. Is it the same? Because I was quite
Yeah.
surprised that your sister was traveling an hour for school, and I wondered if it's the same over there, or you can just kind of pop up to whatever
Yeah.
school.
Yeah. So yeah, for public schools, you can't jump into a public school that's like miles away from you. But with Bishop Montgomery, it's a private school. So private schools, you just have to pass a few tests and then pay the money to attend the school. So yeah, that's how my sister was able to play over there.
Oh, okay. That makes it a lot more sense. Yeah, yeah. And I wasn't too sure if it was a athletic scholarship or what, but yeah.
I mean, it talks a lot to the sacrifices that your family made, obviously, at that time, because I think you mentioned that your dad took a job in Torrance to make it easier for Sophia to be able to get to school and back. How did that work for the family generally?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I mean, I didn't see my dad. I didn't see my dad or my sister or Sophia from like 6:30 to like 8 p.m. I would not see them because those two would be taking off at like the crack of dawn. She even had like morning workouts, so maybe even earlier than that, they would be gone. And during her season, at least, my dad would even come back, pick us up from school. And luckily my younger siblings and I, we went to school around our neighborhood. So within walking distance. So we were able to get around fine. And my grandma always helped drive my siblings and I around. So that was settled. But with Sophia, it was always my dad and her mostly, and my mom at work. But during her season, I mean, my dad was coming back, picking us up at night and driving us back over there to go watch her play. And I mean, during the downtime, we would be at the malls, we would be eating, we would be hanging out with my dad's friends out there, different families in that community, in the South Bay community. I mean, we would watch movies, and then we'll go watch my sister play, and then we'll drive back home. I mean, that was kind of the schedule. But yeah, it was a lot. It's a lot of driving. It's a lot of trying to figure out what to do while she's not playing. But yeah, it was definitely a sacrifice for sure. Definitely a sacrifice.
So were the same expectations put on you as and your siblings as on Sophia to pursue this, lifelong commitment to basketball?
Yes, definitely. My dad, he had an interesting way of doing it. He was like, whoever comes first, we'll get her out of the house, and then we'll focus on the next one, kind of a way of looking at us. But I mean, throughout our entire childhood, it was the same expectation of making it to at least college, and then hope maybe professionally. But for Sophia, it was very clear that was, I mean, them two talked about it a lot more than I did with him. But for sure, because she was the firstborn, he was going to throw all the eggs in and see and test it out and see where it was best for her before he moved with us.
But then Sophia actually went back to your local high school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's where you got the regionals?
Yeah, her regional state title, yep.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting that even after all that time traveling, back and forth to Torrance, that then it was like, hey, I'm coming back home, and then that's where it all happened.
Yeah. I mean, her team at Bishop was just as good. I mean, they were a pretty good team. And for us going to Bishop, I mean, the purpose of that was because her coach at the time was recruiting her to go to that school, one. But the teams in that division had so many Division I players that the exposure was going to be really important for Sophia in that area. And my dad kind of wanted us to get out of it was kind of his own way of kind of like breaking out of the Asian American basketball, bubble that we have going on in SoCal. He wanted to show that, or not show, but he wanted to kind of expose her to, to a bigger scene that's, multicultural, like very diverse, and that was Bishop's league was very diverse. They had really great basketball players. So that was one of our main reasons for going to Bishop. But Coming back, I think was just, there was a lot more pluses than minuses when we were weighing out the options when Sophia's bishop coach ended up leaving the school. And we knew that they had a great team at Keppel. I mean, Keppel's had a really great girls basketball program for years, even before, like way before us, for generations. So we knew that going there would be a safe bet. I mean, all her friends are there. It's a 15-minute drive compared to an hour drive. I mean, that's a pretty big plus in itself. So, and there's a very promising outlook in terms of, you know, what that postseason will look like. So my dad was like, I think we should come back and save some money.
And that team, I really liked that. It was a cool part of the story that Sophia went back to Keppel to be closer to home, obviously, but also that team had so many great Asian American players and a big. I think it seemed really important for that context, even though this happened not eons ago, to have that really strong Asian American representation on that high standard of scale of high school basketball. I thought that was a really, really cool part of the story. Were you guys aware at the time? I know that in the documentary it mentions how Keppel continued to, you know, break records and perform the best that the school has in a while. But were you and your family and the team aware at the time of how important that was on a grander, like social and cultural context?
You know, at the time, I would say no, because it just felt really, I mean, I think for us, because we lived in the area, we didn't realize that a lot of people looking in, they might see it as like, whoa, there's like a full team of Asian girls on this team. Like, we never, like, because we grew up in it, like it was never a question, you know, it felt so normal to us that we didn't really think about that larger social cultural, you know, lens that people might have looked at us at. We were just trying to win games, you know, like we were just trying to win championships. But I think looking in hindsight, I mean, it was a pretty big deal. Yeah, definitely. And now that I've been educated on like the history of, you know, Asian America diaspora too, like I think it's really unique to have grown up in a place that would like love basketball so much and produce like really great Asian American hoopers in general. So yeah, I didn't realize it till later on, for sure.
Now, you've talked a lot about your dad through this, and one of the things that you covered quite a bit in the documentary was your father's hospitalisation during COVID and how it affected Sophia and obviously affected your whole family.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that would have been a pretty tough thing to put up there on the documentary, because it's like, you know, you're opening up the world to this huge impact to your family. How did that feel for you?
We have, I mean, it's been years since, you know, it's been 2016 was when it happened. So my family and I had a lot of time to kind of process the event itself and, you know, where my dad's, you know, whole situation. And we're actually, if you came up to any of us and like asked us about it, we're actually very open and talking about it and laying down the details of what happened. We really don't sugarcoat what happened to my dad because, I mean, we just don't have anything to hide, really. I mean, and so putting this in the film, I think it was, I think for Sophia, she might say something different because she was the one telling the story from her perspective. But it is, I mean, at the time, I didn't think that my film was going to be shown to a larger audience. I thought it was just family and friends, and they already know our story. So, you know, this would just be a retelling, if anything. But there is a little like hesitation on how much detail should go into it. You know, do we want to, how much should we show? But I think both of us really, you know, early on in the planning stages, we really wanted to make this as genuine and candid as possible. And no one will really understand the full scope of the story if we held back on, you know, what she felt like in that moment of receiving the news, you know, and how she was able to process her grief. I don't want to sugarcoat anything or leave anything out. So, and she was fully along with it. So that's kind of what we, you know, set out to do when making the film.
Yeah, she was certainly very honest and vulnerable, especially when it got to the point in the documentary speaking about the timing, especially of when your dad became unwell, how she was just starting college and she just reached, you know, the second tier or the second top tier of the journey that they had planned out together for her life since Sophia was a kid. So I think the timing of everything was made it even more heartbreaking. And she was super vulnerable in that stage too. So we got to commend her for being so honest and vulnerable to accurately share the story. But also was really impressed that your sister was able to recognize that she needed to have a break. Like that I feel like especially when you're that age and you've been put on this path to play college ball and pro ball since you're a kid, and something like that happens in the middle of it to disrupt it, there's still this obligation to keep going and to just suck it up and deal with it. So I was really, I say proud, even though I don't know your sister, but like it was really kind of impressive that she recognized that she really needed to take a break, step away from the sport and find a love for it without the emotional connection that she loved it because, it was a thing she did with your dad.
Yeah. No, definitely. And I mean, for her too, like she really, this was my first time really hearing her side of the story. I knew that at the time of when it was happening, I mean, we were all struggling with our grief at the time, but for her, I just knew that she was struggling with a lot of depression and anxiety, but I didn't know at the extent of like how bad it was and how not bad, but like how much it was affecting her in every aspect of her life. And she really reached a point where she was like, I can't even do this, and and that's when it became really clear to her that she needed to go she really needed to go find help for herself. So yeah, and I commend her for doing that. I mean, she did that all on her own too. She didn't want to put any more burden on us, and that's why she kind of kept that to herself and to her coach up in, Davis. And we're also just really grateful to her coach for even letting her take that break, because a lot of schools, I mean, when you're on scholarship, you have an obligation to your school, at all costs. And her coach was really gracious and gave her as much time as she needed to take that step away.
And the college your sister attended, is that close by to where you and your family were living as well?
Oh yeah, so Davis is in NorCal, so that's about a 6-hour trip up north in California. Yeah,
so it's still in California, but the other part, I guess. I didn't
yep,
realize it was that far away.
Yeah. Davis is a drive.
Wow, because I was thinking at least Sophia was relatively close to home. I saw a lot of the college offers she received, including the likes of Nebraska. So I imagine it would have been even harder having to be so far away from home when it happened.
Yep.
So, yeah, I'd take the 6-hour drive versus a 6-hour flight, I think.
Yeah. No, and that's a part of the film I kind of had to cut out. She did explain, that distance and what that distance kind of meant to her when I was interviewing her, but that part got omitted. So for those of you guys internationally, you probably wouldn't think that Davis was like 6 hours away, but yeah.
The film closes out with the move to Taiwan and what it meant to Sophia and your dad, and obviously the rest of the family. It's a key point in the story. How did you find yourself having to deal with putting that part of the story together, and how you made it work within the confines of the film?
Yeah. So, I mean, when I was initially storyboarding, I was thinking, my plan at least was that I would go back and forth between the present, which was at the time her training, packing, saying goodbye to my dad, talking with family, old coaches, all of that. I was going to mix that in with the past, her talking about her childhood, high school, college, taking her through her career basically, and then end with Taiwan. But my professors were actually against that because the film would be a feature and not a short. And at the time, the goal was to have a short, and I really wanted to make a short. I didn't want to make a feature film, but it was just going to be way too long if I had done like a back and forth kind of thing. Though it would have been nice. It would have been cool to try to explore that, but I couldn't. I was like, no, we can't go that route. So I knew I had to switch things up a bit. And the best way we kind of came up with was for me to hint the end of her being in Taiwan kind of at the beginning, or just that the results in the beginning, and then tell the story out fully to get the big picture and really establish what it really means for her to play in Taiwan. And yeah, like building the story first and then delivering the hard parts later on in the film, I realized made for like a more, I guess, impactful story. And so that's kind of how yeah, that's kind of how we ended up figuring that out. And I mean, even when we were filming this in September, it was still kind of unclear whether or not she would actually be going to Taiwan. So when we finally got the news that she was through, it was a great way for me to like be like, oh, okay, so now it's happening. I could do this now. So yeah.
And were you there ready with a camera to film the moment she got the official news that she could go?
I was not there. I was not there for that. It was a quick text. Hey guys, it's happening. And I was like, great. We need to start filming this. We need to start filming everything now. Yeah, it would have been interesting though if I was able to get that, but no, I missed it, unfortunately.
I mean, look, this is really a really personal thing for you, but it was really interesting from my perspective to see that, you had put this together, you directed it, you wrote it, you had edited it, you've basically done this whole piece, and it is great yourself. What was the personal journey for you as you were going through that whole exercise, literally from, plotting, storyboarding, right the way through to editing and finishing?
Yeah, I'm gonna answer this question like and looking at it like from the professional standpoint. I mean, for me going into this, I knew that I wanted to be on deck, just myself though. I wanted to see how I could do this, how well I could do this, and like which part of it I like. Because I know in the entertainment industry, there's so many steps to production, and I was like, I don't really know which part really stands out to me, so I really wanted to get the full scope of it. And it turns out I really enjoyed doing every part of it. Um, and it's so much fun. This is like everything that I've always wanted to do. I love making like videos like this. I love editing and putting music to tracks and sound mixing and looking for archival footage. Like I had so much fun doing that. And so yeah, I really wanted to make it a point for me to be able to do this on like a professional standpoint. But on a personal journey throughout this, I mean, making this with Sophia has definitely brought me closer with her. I mean, we love each other, obviously, but we are also sisters and we butt heads a ton. So, I mean, during shooting, we got into many fights. Many fights. Definitely got frustrated with each other at some points, but I mean, we both knew our purpose for doing this, and she really trusted me to make this, which really meant a lot. And again, like I said before, I never really heard what she was going through when everything with my dad happened. So I think understanding, the extent of her, depression and anxiety, and kind of explaining where she was at that part of her life, I was really able, to empathize with her.
Mm.
And I'll also add too that, I mean, through this film, I kind of also revisited my own like grief over my dad's situation. And I mean, like the footage, there was like a clip that I archived in the very beginning of the film of Sophia and my dad shooting, or Sophia shooting outside and my dad kind of coaching her. So I was at school when I digitized that tape and I had never seen it before. And when my dad's voice came in, it was a surprise because I had no idea who was behind the camera. But then my dad's voice all of a sudden came in. And at that point I was just like sobbing because I didn't realize, it didn't really hit me until then, like how long it's been since I had heard my dad's voice. And also just Sophia talking, through her grief too. Like I felt it. I mean, you can't see me behind the camera, but I was also like crying with her because, I remembered how I felt when I first heard that news, like I was kind of like revisiting those memories and those hard times. But with the waves of, grief that comes here and there, there's also a lot of healing that comes with that, and being able to talk about it or hearing Sophia talk about it and like kind of talking about it with her and sharing it with my family. It's very healing for all of us to kind of open up this like, I feel like people want to hide this, but for us to kind of share it and throw it out in the open, it's really nice, to be able to bond over, a shared experience like that. I learned a ton from doing this. Yeah.
I'm sure lots of people would be able to resonate with that story as well in lots of different ways, whether they experienced a similar family tragedy or something, parallel to it. And now your sister has, after, creating the pathway and the representation at Keppel with a very strong Asian American team, she's now created a new pathway for other female Asian American basketballers by playing pro in Taiwan. I mean, it's another thing. Did she realize, or did you and your family realize that she's doing something for the first time that no one else has ever done?
Yeah, honestly, it didn't hit us until, I mean, her agency was like, yeah, she is the first. And we were like, whoa. Because, I mean, for us, like Jeremy Lin's like a huge inspiration for us, him being the first, Taiwanese American to play in the NBA. We were kind of like, wait, I feel like this is kind of like on the same scale as that. And then when we started thinking about that, we were like, whoa, this is pretty crazy. Yeah. But for us, I mean, we were just happy that she was even able to like do this. We were just grateful that they were going to take her in, because at the time was still very serious over there in Taiwan. I mean, Asia in general, but especially in Taiwan. So for her to even like get her passport, we were like, whoa, like this is like, small wins. And then for them like taking her in and being like, hey, come play for this team. I mean, that was already a lot for us. So yeah, it was definitely a very, very exciting, huge moment for her.
One of the things that I found really interesting, it surprised me when we were watching the film, was that Sophia had gone on a podcast with Kaz and Daz.
Kaz and Daz. Yeah.
I was sitting there going, hey, that's Kaz and Daz, who, and we've done a couple of podcasts with them as well. Like, the connections through basketball are really interesting in that respect. Were there any other connections that you came across that may not necessarily have made the final cut?
That's a good question. Do you mean like with anything outside of basketball in general, or
in general, like outside of basketball, within the basketball community, but those sort of like little connections that may not be obvious until you're actually sort of going through and putting things together and going, oh, you start drawing those little links that you may not have known or may not have been obvious before you actually went through that exercise.
I mean, I'll definitely say, I think one thing that I was trying to, a common theme, I guess, throughout the film was, I guess, this dream that my, or I don't know, I hope this answers your question, but just this, basketball is just a lot. It's a lot more than just playing the sport itself, I would say. Through making this film, we realized, both of us, through what my sister says too, it's a lot more of a mental game, if anything, than physical. And there is, that whole community aspect of being able to, I mean, even the other podcast that I also had in the film too, that was from two of her friends outside of our city. So they didn't even really know who my sister was, but they've heard of her because she's played at their school in like a tournament, and then they wanted to bring her back to talk with her, and then they became friends. So, I mean, that's like just an example of how, these weird connections and intersections could even happen. Basketball is political at the end of the day. Like, your performance has an impact. What you do off the court is just as important. And you become a reflection of like the team that you're on and the community you come from. So I think definitely those connections and intersections were important for us. And I mean, it was made clear because we had a lot of people, we were able to reach out to a lot of people to kind of get, like, if I could make a feature film, I really would. And there'd be a ton of more interviews in this, and a lot of more people who've helped us throughout our careers. They would totally be in this. I mean, and that's all connections, intersections through hoops for sure.
When is the 39th LA Asia Pacific Film Festival being held?
Yeah, so it's happening in downtown LA from May 4th through the 13th. I think there's 2 days where there's nothing happening. They call it their days of rest. But my film will be screening on May 13th, the last day of the festival, on Friday. It'll be preceding the doc feature, Dame Valerie Adams, and she's this 2-time Olympian gold medalist in shot putting. She's from New Zealand. Yeah, that's the details of the film.
Have you showed the film to a wider audience past your family yet?
So when I first finished my thesis, I had a smaller private screening for extended, like, family, friends, and extended family. And there was about maybe like 40, 50 of us in a small theater that my uncle was able to get me connected to. So that was a smaller screening. But yeah, this is definitely a wider, way bigger audience now that it's in this festival. And I mean, I've submitted it to other festivals too, so we'll see if those land. But for now, LA Asian Pacific Film Festival. Yeah.
So first time the public will get a real taste of the story.
Yep, exactly.
How exciting.
Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous because I'm like, man, we're talking about a place that people know, people know about. We're talking about, experiences that people could share. So I just hope that I just hope that they could like at least like our old teammates, old friends in the basketball world, that they'll appreciate too what I was able to, put out.
Okay, the last thing for me is what's happening for Sophia in Taiwan at the moment?
Yeah, so they're playing games right now in their league going on out there. I'm gonna be completely candid. I mean, it's been very interesting since she's gotten there. We again realize how political things are when it comes to sports. So, but right now she's still in the film. She kind of briefly touched on how she's like learning her way and trying to bond with her teammates more, learning the language, and so that barrier of not being able to speak is a big one. Speaking Taiwanese, that's a big barrier that she's running into. She as much as she could learn the plays and figure out her way around the court basketball wise, at the end of the day, that's her way of connecting culturally and feeling more at home over there. And so she's kind of been working at that a lot more recently. But other than that, she's doing really well. She has a support system out there. We have some family out there. So yeah, it's a very big self-discovery moment for her, I would say, but she's enjoying her time for sure.
Cool.
And Australia's not that far from Taiwan, so next time he wants to play down here in the Southern Hemisphere, come a little bit further south.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good competition down here, and
Oh yeah. I have a friend. Her name's Kiki. She played at one of the schools, I think, in Australia for her like study abroad. I'm not sure which school, but she loved it. So she had a great time over there. So I know you guys have a great women's program happening over there.
Jocelyn, thanks so much for joining us. It's been really interesting. Personally, I really, really loved watching the documentary. I thought it was great. It was really fascinating. I thought it was a great story. And, all the best of luck in the film festival.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you guys, both you and Jacinta, for just even having me. I'm, again, really grateful to share my thoughts over this with you guys.
Shooting the Breeze can be found on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Don't forget to subscribe and share the podcast with all your friends.